Alright, so now I'm going to show you the local adjustment presets. These are going to be found under the adjustment brush or the graduated filter or even the radial filter. Mostly what I use these for is the adjustment brush. You just click on this brush here to open that up, and you'll find the presets under the effect drop down. So it's probably going to say custom to start with. But if you just click on that, and then down here you'll find the ones that are prefixed with EE for explore and exposure. These presets, I've tried to create them to emulate the way luminosity masks work. And of course they're not going to be the same, but it's the closest I could come in Lightroom, and I think they work fairly well. The thing with the way that I use luminosity masks in Photoshop is I select certain tonal ranges and only brush my burning and dodging into those certain areas. For example, if I was to brush in, if I was just to burn or darken this shadow area, if I just did that with the normal burn preset, then what's going to happen is, let me turn my flow up so you can see this, it's going to darken everything. So the areas that are already really dark get even darker, so they turn pure black real quick. So I'm just going to delete that. So with my presets, I've set these up so you have burn, dodge different areas of the image. So if I wanted to burn or darken just the shadows, I'm going to select burn shadows, and this gives me a whole different array of settings for my preset. And I'm going to bring the flow down on this some, and now you can see when I darken that, the darkest areas don't get too terribly dark. They still get darker, but not in the same way as they do with the normal preset. So I'm going to delete that one. So I have different ones here for midtones as well. So if I wanted to darken a certain area in the midtones, it's going to try to just affect the midtones and not affect the really bright highlights or the dark shadows. So it works pretty effectively for that. I'm just going to delete that. And then if I wanted to darken any highlights, I would use this one. So if I wanted to darken up this mountain peak up here, see how it brings that area down a little bit without affecting the shadows too much. Kind of brush over into the shadows, and it's not going to really affect it all that much. It's still good to use the auto mask with a lot of these. You'll want to try with and without. Sometimes it works well, sometimes it doesn't. So on the same thing with if I click on new and select, so dodging is brightening up. So if I want to brighten the highlights, this is really important to make your images pop, because the highlights are really what make an image sing. So if I brighten up just my highlights, and I'm going to reduce my flow some, and just brighten up these areas that already have nice light on them. So you can see how that really lightens that up, and it's a pretty nice effect. And I'm just going to apply it lightly to some of these areas where I want to bring more attention to. And I might add a little bit to these trees in here, just adding to the light that's already there, just to enhance a little bit, to bring it back to what you saw, because cameras do not record the same thing that we see with our eyes. So we do need to add this little bit of post-processing to bring it back to our original vision. Other ones we have in here, created this one for the Orton effect, and this kind of adds a little glow to your highlights. So you only want to paint this onto your highlights. You don't want to apply it to the entire image. That's really where it's meant to be applied. So if I paint this into the highlight areas, you can see how it adds a little glow, and you have to go really subtle with this one, but it can have a really nice effect. But remember to keep it constrained to your highlights and keep it really subtle. So you want to go with a low flow. And then finally, if I come to create a new one again, I have these ones called background, foreground, and midground. And what these do is it tries to create an atmospheric effect. So for the background, if I paint this in, I might have to raise the flow a little to so you can actually see this. But it actually brightens it up a little bit and lowers the contrast. That's what you want to see in the background, because that's how it mimics the natural atmospheric effects. And then I can create a new one for the midground. Oops, the midground. And I have too high of a flow on that one, so I'm going to do that and reduce this around 10 and just add a little bit of that effect in there. Don't need much on this image because it's so bright there already. So then I'll click new and create one for the foreground. And this is going to add some detail to your foreground and a little bit of contrast. So we can see this is where we started with the image without any local adjustments, and this is where we ended up. And it's not exactly where I would take it. It was just kind of an example of the brushes. So now I'll actually take it on a different image. Okay, so this image will be a better example of how those foreground, midground, and background work. So I will start with the background, and I'm just going to brush that into this area up here. And I'm going to need a little more flow on this one. See how that kind of lightens it up and makes it look like there's atmosphere back there. The camera kind of renders it pretty flat. So here you can see a before and after with that. And then I'll click new and select midground. And I'm just going to brush that into this area. See how it's brightening it up a little bit. Just adding some pop to that area. And then I'll click new again and select my foreground and just brush that into this area up front. So now you can see what we had before. It's kind of flat, a little too contrasty, and then with those local adjustments it kind of brings everything together. And now if I wanted to do some more local adjustments with burning and dodging, so if I wanted to, let's say we add a little Orton effect to this little hill right here. You can see how it adds a little bit of glow to that and just makes it stand out. And I'll just add it subtly to certain areas. That was not subtle. Undo that. So when doing this burning and dodging, you usually want to use a really low flow on your brush, so somewhere around 10, and then just subtly add that in. So that looks pretty good. And then if I wanted to do any more burning and dodging, so if I wanted to darken up my foreground, I could select burn shadows, take a little attention away from this area. Okay, so now you can see before without any local adjustments and after. It's quite a dramatic difference. So that really wraps it up. I hope you guys really enjoy these presets, and it really gives you some stunning images. And I really appreciate any donations you can give, since I give these totally free. Any help is really appreciated. So thank you guys.